Scanning for audio.
Did you see what John Barrowman's had installed in his house?
The back half of a 22-year-old man who got stuck for 11 hours.
Torch wood.
Welcome. Welcome once again to the Tin Dog Podcast, number 107. This podcast's been recorded in different parts. The main section of this show is a review of the 2005 series story, Dalek, which was recorded a fortnight ago while I was out for a walk in the park. So I'm sorry if there's any variant in sound levels, although there shouldn't be. This week's show is also dedicated to John Branning for donating to help the Tin Dog Podcast keep broadcasting. Thanks, John. It really means a lot to anyone who gives anything to help this show keep going. As well as Dalek, I'll be talking about Dreamland, the new animated 10th Doctor story, The Gift, the end of the Sarah Jane Smith series, and of course, as is traditional, we'll have a Whostrology. Remember, if you'd like to buy a Whostrology for someone for Christmas, act now. Go to eBay, type in Whostrology, WHOSTROLOGY, and I'll do my best to get them to you long before Christmas. Before I do that, of course, there is the big breaking news, not covered anywhere else, that there's going to be a Torchwood Coronation Street crossover. Here's a sample taken from Monday's episode.
Do you know what I saw today? A weevil. Just sitting there looking at me. Like not a care in the world. Do you know I can't stop thinking about this weevil? I think there might be thousands of the little beggars lurking about. I'm going to have to bottom them cupboards. Oh, better still, why don't you give them a good talking to? If that doesn't make them leave, I'll take a flamethrower to them.
Deirdre Rashid, or Barlow, or whatever she's called these days, is destined to become queen of the Weevil people. More on those breaking stories as it happens. So here's me, walking through the park, talking about Dalek.
A great big museum.
An alien museum. Someone's got a hobby.
The cage contains my one living specimen.
Must have fallen through time, the only survivor.
It's killing him! Do something!
I swear, no one on this base is safe. You've got to keep it in that cell.
You can't get out. That lock's got a billion combinations.
Civilians, let him through!
That thing downstairs is going to kill every last one of us. What's the nearest town?
Salt Lake City.
Population?
1 million.
All dead. If you want orders, follow this one. Why don't you just die?
Really? Then give us 2 seconds!
I've come to help. I'm the doctor.
Exterminate!
Impossible.
Exterminate!
Recorded live in a park on a wonderful autumn afternoon. As promised, this time I'll be talking mostly about Dalek. I'll also be doing it without any notes whatsoever. Forgive me if I ramble, but I just couldn't help myself. Way back in 2005, Doctor Who had only been back with us for 5 weeks? And on the 5th week, I discovered, rather surprisingly, that I had other arrangements. I was going to be somewhere else. I was actually going to be in London, at a hotel near Heathrow, at the very time that Doctor Who was going to be broadcast. This I didn't mind. I was taping it after all. I could probably nip off to the hotel room and watch something. It was a Firefly convention after all. God, I loved Firefly. I still do. The film hadn't even been out at that point. There was still talk of another season, and this convention had practically everyone who was worth talking about in attendance. The guy who plays Jane had cancelled, but I didn't know it at this point, and I'd decided for the cosplay event in the evening, the fancy dress walk down, or whatever you wanted to call it, competition, I guess, I'd go as the statue of Jane. You know, from the episode where they sing that song? Yeah, I don't really need to go there. This is Doctor Who based rather than Firefly after all. And so I spent the first few weeks before the convention sorting this out. You don't need to know the ins and outs, but basically my costume looked superb, with a big fake head and everything. You could hardly walk in it, but after all, I was going as a statue. I thought I stood a pretty good chance of winning. That was until I saw the person who actually won. Are professional special effects people allowed to enter these competitions? It was 4 years ago, Michael. Move on. So the organisers announced, rather secretly, and let's face it, such things are against the BBC licence, that we could all sit in the large hall before the fancy dress event and watch Doctor Who on the giant video screens. This, for me, was a massive thing. The person I was with at the time was never a big Doctor Who fan, but was more than willing to put up with me watching it just this once. No, the reason it was out of the ordinary is because I was going to watch an episode of Doctor Who with a group of people. You have to remember, I'm an old-school fan, and it must be difficult for some of you to even imagine what it's like, almost to be ashamed of being a Doctor Who fan. Now, ashamed is too strong a word. You just learned not to bring it up in polite company, not to talk about it, not to, well, admit it too often. No matter where you worked, you always found at least one kindred spirit, but we were seen as oddballs. But here, at a sci-fi convention, for a different show, I was going to watch Doctor Who with other people. It wasn't 1:30 in the morning, and I was coming home from the pub and thinking, I'll just watch Pyramids of Mars. No, this was a brand new show that I'd never seen before, a story that was new to me, and I was sharing it with others. It felt positively perverse. But best of all, it was Dalek. Now, we'd just had the disappointing run that was World War III and Aliens of London, and I knew that this story was apparently based on Jubilee. More about that in a moment. Sorry about that, a squirrel just ran past. Sadly, not a red squirrel, but one of those strange interloper grey ones. And so, with my costume safely stowed underneath a very nice table, I got into the enormous hall early, settled down, and watched Dalek. It bore almost no resemblance to Jubilee, apart from the fact that there was a doctor in it, a companion, a megalomaniac, and of course a Dalek. All that messy and tedious time travel nonsense that's in the audio had it all gone. And before us was, well, the pinnacle of this whole series for me. This wasn't just Doctor Who not to be ashamed of. This was Doctor Who to talk about with people. This was sci-fi as good as I ever remembered Doctor Who being. I abandoned my complaints about Eccleston's voice and just drank the whole thing in. It was glorious. It was well acted. It was just wonderful to behold. I'd like to see Van Statten return as a changed man in some future story with the 11th or maybe 12th Doctors. Wonderful, wonderfully quotable lines like, "You would make a good Dalek," and "You're the one with the gun." The Doctor had never been so damaged. The emotional journey was there. It's difficult to imagine the whole story taking place without the Dalek being in it, but there was talk, when the rights issue was in flux, of the Toclafane being on board. Can you imagine the story even remotely as hard-hitting or as good? The Dalek here was as good as we always imagined. The centre rotating section, succouring someone to death. It's wonderful. It just can't be faulted. I'm sure somebody out there could probably find fault with it. The only thing I had issue with was the extrapolation of Rosa's DNA into becoming, well, time energy to heal a Dalek, which was eventually explained away. But for a good year and a half, it kind of niggled away. I guess as a Doctor Who fan, I just need a little bit more exposition than most. And so, the show finished. We chatted about it. The guests from Firefly all came out, and I went off to get dressed for the evening, smug in the knowledge that the show people would be talking about wasn't Firefly, but it was my Doctor Who. I won't even bother making jokes about the Dalek downloading the entire internet. I think they've all been done before. And for the record, I came second in the competition, just like I did at the Buffy convention when I came as Smile Time Angel. And also, for the record, that was my last big convention. As this segment's been recorded out of order, I'll leave you now and come back much later when I can review other things. Be seeing you. Which brings me on, rather nicely, to Dreamland, the 10th Doctor, and his animated trip to America's Area 51.
Reports have come in of a recent unauthorized entry to the top secret base known as Area 51.
Howdy there, partners.
A
person of unknown origin. The only name he would give us was...
I'm the doctor, by the way.
The Doctor.
Take me to your leader.
I've heard all kinds of things about that place. None of it's good.
Look out! Dreamland? Oh, I've always wanted to go there.
Doctor Who, Dreamland. From Saturday on Red Button. Another dimension of Doctor Who.
Set 11 years after the original Roswell crash. And yes, for those pedantic people out there, there was already a missing adventure set at Roswell, with the Seventh Doctor and the Master being the American base's scientific advisor. Yes, I know this exists, and whether it's canon or not, you can argue amongst yourselves, but we're talking about Dreamland now. And I am in two minds. I liked the flash animation that we've had in the past. The characterization and the design was very nice. But here, they've outdone themselves. The sets looked fabulous. If you'd shelled out your hard-earned cash for a computer game and the backgrounds looked like this, and the cars and the vehicles and the buildings and the scenery in general, you'd be well impressed. They were well designed, well thought out, and well constructed. Direct from former Doctor Who magazine editor gave us a fast-paced and tightly packed story. For those of you who haven't seen it via the Red Button, there is an omnibus edition available this Saturday morning at 10 AM on BBC Two. But in order to review it for this show, I recorded each show every day and edited them all together so I could watch them all in my own homemade omnibus edition. I like Dreamland. That's not to say it's perfect. The animation of the actual characters left a lot to be desired. I know it's because mainly you're dealing with identifiably real people. Ideally, you'd end up in some sort of motion capture world, which just wasn't an option. The hand movements are reminiscent of Resident Evil 1, waving around and just being, well, unanimated. The female character, voiced by Georgia, was, well, I'm sorry to say, her face looked like a blow-up doll. Now, if you didn't like the animation, what you could do, and what I know many people have done, is simply record the sound, or shut your eyes and listen to it. It's a great 10th Doctor story. Okay, it has its flaws, but what story doesn't? Given in much larger palette than usual, it is easy to spoil Doctor Who and wander off from what can only be described as the classic storytelling thing. Does a Doctor Who story, given a larger scope, make it less of a Doctor Who story? That's something for debate by people with larger minds than me. It's not the greatest story of all time, but it's well worth not ignoring. A long time ago, when Doctor Who wasn't coming back, I often talked in the pub, as Doctor Who fans often do, about what we'd do if we'd won the lottery. And I, for one, at the time, wanted to get the rights for Doctor Who and start work on Doctor Who an animated series. Such ideas, of course, were mental, but as one of my degrees is in animation, it wasn't that far-fetched. Computer animation has come a hell of a long way, and this show really deserved not to be ignored. God knows where it fits in the whole lonely 10th Doctor storyline, but that's fine by me. So set your Sky Pluses or your good old-fashioned VHS, record it, and give it a go. It's another Doctor Who story in another format. The animation may grate on you at the beginning, but don't judge it as harshly as you could, and you'll probably enjoy it. Go on, you know you want to. Something that you could have enjoyed, but probably didn't, was the end of Sarah Jane Smith's Series 3. You see, the problem with this is, well, the Slovene in it.
We are Blathery.
I think it's a brilliant idea. A dinner party.
This little plant could save millions of lives.
Will you be our ambassador? Our racweed will change your planet forever.
How's the pot plant? Savaged anyone in the night?
The racweed is not harmless.
I can see that. There's a great big flower sticking out of it now.
Oh, I'm so tired.
What's this?
The plant appears to have mutated. It will send its victims into a deep, deep coma, from which they will never return.
Mr. Smith, I need you. Mr. Smith, please, help us.
Now, as you all know from my review of World War III and Aliens of London, I'm just not a fan of the Slovene. And here we have a Slovene story that tries to depart from the standard. The Blatherine, distant cousins of the Slovene, turn up in order to make up for problems caused by the Slovene. You know for a fact things are going to go horribly wrong, and the fact that they're voiced by Simon Callow and Miriam Margolyes, known to some people out there as the voice of the Cadbury's Caramel Rabbit, you know that high-standard performances are all round. And that's fine by me. And it is well acted. The actor playing Clive manages to pull off a really good set of performances here. His lines are very well thought out. I just can't quite put my finger on it, apart from the fact that the Slovene are in it. And the fact that the storyline is far, far too similar to Claws of Axos. But how many 8-year-olds out there have seen Claws of Axos? Yeah, I got a smile at the very end when Sarah Jane Smith unknowingly quoted the Fifth Doctor by saying there should have been another way. And everyone watching went, nah, we don't really care. I'm glad there wasn't another way. It's just that, with the exception of the Mona Lisa story, this has been quite a strong season. Enjoyable, funny, everything that Torchwood wasn't. I've enjoyed it. I know there are people out there who want to disagree with me, and if you want to disagree with me about me not liking the Slovene, you're more than welcome. Before I move on to read the Whostrology, I just want to say that Doctor Who magazine had a competition in issue 400. What does Doctor Who mean to you? The winner would get to go to the set of Waters of Mars and interview various people. Now, apart from the fact that only one of the winning entries was of an age even remotely similar to mine, which made me feel so very old, I was a little bit angered by the fact that, well, the winner's entry seemed to actually not be their work. Some girl had asked her teacher what Doctor Who meant to them, and she'd written it down. Surely that's the teacher's work. All she was a glorified secretary. I'm not bitter. Much. I entered the competition myself, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read out my entry to the competition itself, on the grounds that I really didn't win. What Doctor Who means to me. 400 words. I wasn't there in 63. Very few of us were. Born on the day that the Sea Devils first wobbled across the screen, I've been told that I could kick out the theme tune whilst still in the womb. This I doubt. One thing I do know is that it runs parallel with some of my life's more telling moments. In the 80s, due to BBC scheduling, I was always late for scouts, and was taken to one side and interrogated about my timekeeping. The large man loomed over me and asked me this simple question. You have to work out what's more important, Doctor Who or... The moment he reached the word or, I knew I would not be going back to that little green hut. As time passed, I was never as immersed in fandom as I could have been. I bought the weekly as it morphed into the monthly. It became an almost constant companion. I moved from school to university and beyond, dragging my love of the Time Lord with me. We had become secretive, us dyed-in-the-woollen scarf people, and by 89, when the doctor said, somewhere the tea was getting cold, we all knew that the tea had been going cold for a long time, but we still wanted to drink it deeply. As time went by, my shelves began to warp under the volume of virgin paperbacks, Big Finish CDs and VHS. My secret passion consumed my wages and my spare time. Others never truly grasped the hold that a dead TV show could still have over me. It was never the perfect format, it was something much deeper. A place with moral codes, where gods were nothing more than aliens with ideas above their station, and violence was the last resort. Where one unarmed man was enough to change everything. But now our Doctor has returned to us. We are the fans of the old school. We are the lovers of the new show. How were we to know that our brave new world would revolve around Cardiff? However, the thing I truly can't believe is that after 400 issues, I'm about to do something I've not done since I cut out my Join Unit vouchers. I'm going to take scissors to a pristine issue, allowing me to enter a competition. I feel like I'm cutting up an old friend. Now I know that wasn't the best entry in the world, but my heart was in it, and I stand by every single word. This week's Whostrology for Daniel Nicholas Black, born on the 20th of November 1998. Born between the classic and new shows in the time of the lonely Eighth Doctor. Born on the anniversary of the broadcast of the Dalek's Master Plan and the Deadly Assassin Part 4. You share your birthday with Bernard Horsfall. Your Whostrology. Beware a man without a beard, but with ping-pong balls for eyes. A trip to the city may require a new cloak when fire breaks out. Before borrowing someone else's vehicle, it's a good idea to check it over. It's time to leave fiction behind and face a man clinging into life. Remember, if heroes don't exist, it's necessary to invent them. A rod may be stolen in the night. And with that, I'll start to fade away. Here's a little something from a little show I referred back to earlier during my Dalek review.
Joss, the man they called Joss. He wrote about spaceships and shepherds and whores, stood up to the networks and gave them what for. Fox cancelled his program, but that was their loss. The creator of Firefly, the man they call Joss. Now Joss saw the viewers' hearts breaking. He heard the browncoats lament. He saw Fox management taken his show in a way that made no sense. He said, you can't do that to my program. Can't grind it under your heel. So he took all his cast and, well, now at last they've landed a big damn movie deal. He wrote about spaceships and shepherds and whores, stood up to the networks and gave them what for. Fox cancelled his program, but that was their loss. The creator of Firefly, the man they call Joss. Now here is what separates Firefly from other shows you're likely to see. It's meaningful and witty, and the setting's really gritty, and the theme song's about serenity. It's a little like a Western, yeah! It's a little like X-Files. It's better than Trek, and it's funnier than Shrek, and it beats out Andromeda by miles. He wrote about spaceships and shepherds and whores, stood up to the networks and gave them what for. Fox cancelled his program, but that was their loss. The creator of Firefly, the man they call Joss. Dongma. He wrote about spaceships and shepherds and whores, stood up to the networks and gave them what for. Fox cancelled his program, but that was their loss. The creator of Firefly, the man they call Joss. Now here is what separates Whedon from writers who slave in the core. The man they call Joss, well, he said to Fox, I'm going where no show has gone before. He told us about Reavers. He told us about Sin. He took us to the black and we ain't coming back till all those crazy browncoats rise again. He wrote about spaceships and shepherds and whores, stood up to the networks and gave them what for. Fox cancelled his program, but that was their loss. The creator of Firefly, the man they call Joss.
So until next time, be seeing you.
Now, in case you missed it earlier, Here's another chance to look into the future, a super special sneaky peek at this year's Doctor Who Christmas special. So hold on to your sonic screwdrivers, because the Doctor will see you now.
Ah, now, sorry. There you are. So, where were we? I was summoned, wasn't I? An ood in the snow, calling to me. Well, I didn't exactly come straight here. Had a bit of fun, you know, travelled about, did this and that, got into trouble, you know me. It was brilliant. I saw the phosphorus carousel of the great Magellan Gestatt. Saved a planet from the red carnivorous maw. Named a galaxy Allison. Got married. That was a mistake. Good Queen Bess. Well, let me tell you, her nickname is no longer... Anyway. What do you want?
You should not have delayed.
Last time I was here, you said my song would be ending soon. And I'm in no hurry for that.
You will come with me.
Hold on. Better lock the TARDIS. See? Like a car. I locked it like a car. Like, it's funny. No? A little bit. Blimey, I'm trying to make an Ood laugh. So how old are you now, Ood Sigma? Magnificent. Oh, come on, that is splendid. You've achieved all this in how long?
100 years.
Then we've got a problem. Because all of this is way too fast. Not just the city, I mean your ability to call me. Reaching all the way back to the 21st century. Something's accelerating your species way beyond normal.
And the mind of the Ood is troubled.
Why? What's happened?
Every night, Doctor. Every night we have bad dreams.
Returning. It is slowly returning through the dark and the fire and the blood. Always returning to this world. It is returning, and he is returning, and they are returning, but too late. Too late. Far too late. He has come.
Sit with the Elder of the Ood and share the dreaming.
So, right. Hello.
You will join. 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 You will join.
Our man is dead.
You have been listening to the Dim Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.